Oh man, I'm telling you, it's getting a little cool out. Fall is in the air and nothing goes better with fall than pumpkin. So today I wanted to take pumpkin and I wanted to take one of the hottest keto ingredients out there right now, which is cottage cheese, mix those together, come up with something crazy, and oh, cookies. Did somebody say cookies? So let's see if we can get all these ingredients to come together into the perfect pumpkin cottage cheese cookie. Stick around. Now the first thing I gotta do is preheat my oven because I always forget to do that. You're gonna preheat the oven to 350 degrees. Oh yeah, and check it out because inevitably I've always got something in there. Pans sitting in there, dirty dishes from when I was doing another video. You never know what you might find in my oven. Of course, no great recipe starts without Old Yeller. I've also gotten a lot of requests to do more recipes with my keto flour. So I've got some of my keto flour here. I'm just gonna pop it out, and into Old Yeller, I'm gonna throw in 1.25 cups of this. Now just make sure and give it a good shake every time before you get ready. Just make sure all of those ingredients are incorporated in there together. Looks like it's about time for me to make some more. And then I'll go in with the 1/4 cup. And then put the lid back on this and get that out of the way. Because we're done with the flour for this recipe. And here I got my baking powder. I'm gonna go in with 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I'm using Redmond's real salt. Either use that or use a pink Himalayan, something that's still got the minerals in it and has some color to it. You know I hate using more than one measuring spoon, so this is 1/2 of that 1/2, which is 1/4. Go right in with that. And then I'm gonna hit it up with a little bit of cinnamon. And I'm doing 2 of these 1/2 teaspoons or 1 teaspoon. And don't worry, I've got all of the instructions down there in the description box. So make sure you go down there to get all the amounts because I may miss saying something or who knows with me. Anyway, that's that. Look down there for the recipe if you missed something. And then you know you're serious about pumpkin when you got a container of pumpkin pie spice this big. We're serious about pumpkin around here. I'm gonna go in with 1/2 teaspoon. It's gonna be a rounded 1/2 teaspoon, but there you go. Then I'm just gonna mix up all my dry ingredients. And that is all the dry ingredients. Super simple because this flour already has a lot of the ingredients that you need in it to make it act like regular flour. So just mix you up a batch of that, and if you don't have a batch of that, I guess you could go to my original flour recipe. I'll link it up there somewhere, and you could always do the math and divide all that out, but it sure is a whole lot easier just to mix you up a batch of this. So now we got that done, I'm gonna set that off to the side, and I'm gonna mix up my wet ingredient. And why I use my yellow bowl for the dry ingredients, well, I don't know, but I'm gonna use this nice stainless one. Even though I'm not gonna use a mixer with this, I'm just gonna blend it all by hand. This thing will do the trick. So the first thing I'm gonna do is take an egg, beat that right in there. And I'm going old school with a fork to beat this thing up. That's just the way I came up. We didn't use whisks. You use a fork or you don't beat the egg. Or you use one of those pre-hand mixers that had 2 whisks on it, and you turn the little handle on it and it spun around. That's before they invented motors, I reckon. Now the next thing I'm gonna add in is pumpkin puree. Now when you do pumpkin, just make sure you read the label. This says grade A pumpkin. Some of them actually do say pumpkin filling, but you gotta go to the back and make sure the only ingredient in here is pumpkin. That's all you want on there. So a lot of those pumpkin pie fillings have all kind of sugar, all kind of spices. We're gonna add our own spices. I don't want what they got, and I don't want the sugar. So there you go. Ingredients: pumpkin, a little bit of grade A. I don't want no grade B pumpkin either, so how about that? Now, if you don't go to the fancy Publix, you're not gonna get this little pop top, so you're gonna need your can opener and go around and do that. But if you're fancy enough to go to Publix, they give you this little pop top right here, and you just pull it back. Of course, it's also about $1 higher than everywhere else, but that's all I had time for, so I just had to pay the price. But I got buy one, get one Zevia, so kind of all evens out. I'm gonna do 1/2 cup of pumpkin puree. I want to make sure I fill it all the way up to the top because I do love some pumpkin. If you go a little overboard, that's fine. You don't want to go too much and mess with the ratios of this. We'll just dump that right in there. And there's our pumpkin for these pumpkin cottage cheese keto cookies. If you ain't got one of these, you need some. I'll put the link to them down in the description. Basically what it is, it fits about any size can, but instead of having that lid get in there and get all rusty and nasty and putting aluminum foil on top or whatever, you just pop this bad boy on like that, pop it right in the fridge. It ain't going anywhere. That's the great thing about editing these videos is I just realized I grabbed the 3rd cup, so I added a little extra in here just to make up for the 1/2 cup. But the good news is I got a clean measuring cup that I can go right into this cottage cheese with. I'm using the 4% cottage cheese, full fat cottage cheese, and this is the small curd. And that's what the small curd looks like. The big curd's got bigger curds, so no false advertising here. They give you exactly what you pay for. But so does Aldi and so does Walmart, and they're cheaper. But whatever, had to get it. So I'm gonna go in with a nice 1/2 cup of that. Get every little bit of that out. And of course you gotta taste it, make sure it's okay. You don't wanna serve anybody some bad cottage cheese. Oh yeah, it's gonna be just fine. You know, and I always test my butter and test my cottage cheese. I've never found any bad batches, but you just can't be too careful. And now, of course, I need my 3rd cup for this confectioner's sweetener. This is my blend of sweetener. I'll put a link for that video right up there and down in the description in case you hadn't seen it. But it just saves you a lot of money over buying it in the store. And it's real easy to make. You're gonna pay a little more in the beginning because you need to buy some ingredients in bigger quantities, but over time, it's about 1/3 of the price. Anyway, now that that pumpkin's all cleaned off, I'm gonna go in with 1/3 of a cup of this. Put it right in there. Now look, I know that's not a liquid, but it's gonna go in with a liquid. It's gonna blend in fine because it's confectioners. So I wanna make sure and sweeten up that pumpkin, sweeten up that cottage cheese. And then when we put all the other dry ingredients in, it's gonna come together just right. And now if you watch my channel for any length of time, you know what this blue mug does. 2 tablespoons of butter right in the microwave to melt it. I'll be right back. While I'm waiting for that butter to melt, I'm gonna go through with the finest pure vanilla extract. Now I'm gonna start making my own of this, just so I know for sure. I know they say this stuff's beaver free, but if I make my own, I know for sure.
Oh, thank you. That looks amazing. I love ice cream.
Did you know that they used to use the anal glands of beavers to make it taste like vanilla?
I understand it's difficult to milk the little sacks.
Anyway, we'll do that coming up soon. We can all make some vanilla extracts together. Now that butter is melted, and you don't want it super hot, just melt it enough because you don't want to do any scrambled eggs or anything down inside this. So I'll go ahead and give this a little mix together. Get all this stuff real happy in here. Make sure they all well acquainted together. And then I'll just pour in this butter. Now that I know it's not hot. And again, always taste your butter. Make sure you don't give anybody any bad butter. Now I'm just gonna mix all this up. Now if you want a real smooth consistency, you can always go in and blend this or immersion blend this or whatever you want. But I want these little curds right in here like this for a little bit of different texture. Now you can combine it until it's smooth if you want to, but once you see the end result of this, I think you'll just mix it right in. Just make sure you get that small curd. And this is what it'll look like. So yep, you got some lumps of some cottage cheese in there, but you're gonna be just fine once it's all done. Now I'm just gonna take old Yeller and I'm gonna dump in just a little bit at a time here and just give this a good mix. Make sure all this nice flour and all the other dry ingredients are well incorporated. We've already sweetened that puree and everything. So this is gonna be a great little mix here for some good cottage cheese pumpkin cookies, baby. A little more. Mix all that together. And see, I'm not real patient, so I'm just gonna go ahead and dump it all in. Live dangerously, and we're gonna see what happens. How bad could it possibly be, right? I'm gonna mix this up till this is well combined. I'm gonna grab a couple of other things that we're gonna need for this, and I'll be right back. And once it's all mixed together, this is what it's gonna look like right here. I mean, it ain't the prettiest thing in the world, but it's gonna be one of the tastiest, so we'll just hang out and wait for that to happen. I'm gonna grab a couple more things. I'll be right back. So now that we got that all done, I just needed some parchment paper and a well-seasoned pan. This thing's not old and decrepit, it's well-seasoned, all right? So I'm just gonna take that, and I don't really wanna put the cookies on there, so I'm just gonna take some parchment paper, ball it up like that, and just stick it down there. Now I'm sure that pan's fine, but I wanna make sure and make it as visually appetizing as possible. So now, let me give this a little taste. Oh yeah. So it's sweet enough for me. Taste it at this point. If you want a little more sweetener, use that confectioner's. You can put it in there and still be able to mix it around a little bit. But we're gonna put an icing on top too. It's gonna give it a little bit more sweetness. So I'm just gonna take my cookie baller, just like in my chocolate chip cookie video. And if you have not made those chocolate chip cookies, I don't know what you're waiting for. It was the original Toll House recipe. And I just changed all the ingredients out for the keto ingredients. It's exactly the same. And I just kind of round these off a little bit. It's a good looking dough right here. Or ugly dough, depending on what you think. But I just like to round them just a little bit like that. And pop them right out. And I'm gonna pretty them up a little bit more than that, but for now, just drop them right on there. I got a little left over I'm gonna need to add to some of these. They're not quite as big. Or you don't have to, you could just take this and eat the rest of it while you're waiting for these to bake. That's up to you. But what I'm gonna do now is just take these and we're gonna mash them down a little bit. Now you can do this after baking them for a little bit if you want to, which is normally what I'll do. I'll push them down like this, just like with the chocolate chip ones. And then about halfway through baking, I'm gonna push them down again. Once they start getting nice and loose in there. Unlike your regular cookies, these are not gonna drop down that much with the density. So you kind of have to just do that part yourself. But it's well worth the effort. So I've got my oven at 350 degrees, and they're gonna need somewhere in the ballpark of 25 or 35 minutes. So I'm just gonna set my timer to 12 minutes. And you know, see what happens after that. Now while that's in the oven getting right, I'm gonna go ahead and grab my hand mixer. I'm gonna grab a couple other things that we need for this frosting, because we're gonna make a cream cheese frosting to go on these. It's gonna be absolutely delicious. Let me grab all my other stuff. So of course the first thing we're gonna need is Old Yeller. And then 2 Old Yeller. I got 4 ounces of softened cream cheese right there. And if you need to soften a little more, you can always put it in the microwave for a little bit. And I'm gonna go ahead and put in my 1/3 of a cup of that confectioner's sweetener right in there. And then I've melted my butter just a little bit. So I'm gonna pour that on there, just so that kind of incorporates in with that sweetener a little bit. Then I'm just gonna give this a good little mix together, just to make sure that sweetener doesn't fly all over the place when we go whipping this up in a minute. And that timer just went off for the cookies. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab those out and show you what they look like. And I'm just gonna go in and flatten these out just a little bit. So just pat them down to about the thickness that you want in a good cookie. So it'll be easy to do this now, a lot easier than it is to do it in the very beginning. So I kind of do it in steps. I kind of figure that out with that first chocolate chip cookie. And like I said, if you don't like the little chunks of cottage cheese in there, you can totally blend it in the beginning. I think it gives it kind of a cool look and people are like, man, what is that? And then you can tell them about keto. You can go up, knock on their door, ride your bicycle up there. Hey, do you have a moment to talk to me about keto? Anyway, I'm gonna throw these back in the oven. So I'm gonna give them a good check after that. And they'll probably need a minute or two after, but we'll see. Let's get back to this frosting. Now, where were we? Oh, right. We were mixing this sweetener in so that it doesn't go crazy when you start to blend it in just a minute. Now, I've got a little bit of heavy cream too. Don't know if we're gonna use it or not. It just depends on how that comes out. But what we are gonna do is just a little bit more vanilla, because I love vanilla. So we'll go right in there with a teaspoon of that. Oh yeah. That's the good stuff. That vanilla goes so good with pumpkin. I mean, what you gonna do? And now, of course, if you like that pumpkin spice, you can go in with a tiny bit more of that. You know, just a little pinch or two. Make sure all that icing's off. And we'll go in and blend this up. And I'm just gonna tell you, if you're watching this for entertainment purposes only, and you don't think you're gonna like a cottage cheese anything, this is the one to try. I'm just telling you right now. All right, you see how that's pretty thick right there? I'm gonna go in with about a tablespoon of heavy cream, and let's see if we get the consistency we want out of this. And see, for me, I want it a little thinner and a little creamier. So if you blend it, that heavy cream is gonna whip up a little bit. So I'll probably put about 2 tablespoons total in here. That's gonna whip up and make it nice and fluffy. That looks about right there. Let's see what this consistency is like here. Oh yeah, that's gonna work fine. See that? That's what you want. That's a nice creamy icing right there. Just make sure I didn't scrape the sides down on it because I feel like I got everything in there, but you may want to do that, you know, if you're a proper baker. I'm just in here kind of winging it, so there we go. I'm gonna stick this off to the side because we got about 1.5 minutes before those cookies are ready to come out. We'll set it to the side and I'll be right back. It's been about 25, 26 minutes total, and look at these beauties. You see how the edge is just kind of getting a little bit brown there. They're nice and soft. So what we're gonna do, we gotta sit them here. They're just gonna have to sit about 5-10 minutes before we transfer them right over there. You know, it's like Tom Petty said, the waiting is the hardest part. And it is, but you gotta do it or they ain't gonna turn out right. So I'll be back about 5 minutes. Well, that was about the longest 5 minutes of my life, but I mean, what you gonna do? So now I'm just gonna take these, transfer them over to this cooling rack. Probably don't even have to use this. I can probably grab them with my hands, but you know, safety first, that's what I say. So just throw them right on this cooling rack. We're gonna let these cool completely before we go on with that icing. And then we're gonna have us some awesome low carb or keto or whatever you wanna call it. Depending on how many you're gonna eat determines if it's low carb or keto, I reckon. So we're gonna let these cool completely. I'm gonna ice them up and we're gonna try these bad boys out. Oh man, I don't know about you, but I can't wait for this. Alrighty then, well, that was the longest 5 years of my life waiting for those things to cool. So I'm just gonna take one, get a little bit of this cream cheese icing. Can you see that? Don't worry about this little mark right there. It ain't gonna hurt anything. This thing got stuck down the bottom of the dishwasher one day and it might have got a little burnt. I'm just gonna ice these up like that. And you can go ahead and ice them all if you want to, or you can just ice them as soon as you're ready. And hey, I've always said I ain't the best baker, and this sure ain't the prettiest icing job in the world, but it'll do. All right, I ain't gonna make you wait any longer. Now, another thing you can do if you want to, if you got any sugar-free sprinkles or whatever, you can just decorate them up a little bit like that. You know, make them a little pretty. And I'm gonna ice the rest of them later, or I'll just eat them all right now, and I ain't trying to do that. I mean, that's some pretty little cookies. But how are they gonna taste? Well, let's see. Oh man, I don't know about you, but that looks good to me. But how does it taste? Oh man, hey, I'm telling you, I like all my cookies a little bit soft. If you don't want them quite as soft, you can always bake them a little longer. Just depends on how you like the consistency of your cookies. If you want to see more things you can make with my keto flour, I'll put a playlist right here for you. And if you're wondering what you need to do with all that leftover pumpkin, check this one out right here.